Bringing you the top stories from Bonners Ferry to St. Mary's and everywhere in between, this is the North Idaho Prepcast with Ryan Scaggs.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, where we break down everything Districts 1 and 2 each and every week in this great state of Idaho. Brandon Baney, as always, joined by Ryan Scaggs. What's going on, Scaggs?
Not too much, man. Glad to be back after a break last week. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on.
I will say that the reason we didn't have a podcast last week was 100% my fault. Ryan was rocking and rolling and ready to go. This is a really bad time of year to get sick because there's so much stuff going on. And so I was just a little under the weather last week, but it's good to be back. You know, it's been like a couple weeks since I've done this. So if I'm rusty, I'm going to lean on you today, big guy.
Well, I had the man cold like Easter weekend too. So, I mean, yeah, I was kind of on the back end of it last week. So I'm feeling good now. But yeah, there's something going on. There's something going around. So my kid was sick last week too.
Yeah. So anyways, as we transition into as we go from my personal life into what people really tuned in for, which is North Idaho sports. Let's after a week off, let's bring it back in with something we haven't really talked about on this Prepcast yet, and that is lacrosse. Lacrosse is one of the fastest growing sports in the state of Idaho. It's not affiliated with the official IHSAA yet. It's strictly a club sport, but more and more schools, more and more communities are bringing lacrosse in, including up north. There's a couple of programs.
Yeah, it's Coeur d'Alene, Lake City, and Sandpoint have teams up here, and I was talking to one of the local players. I'll give a shout out to Levi Ballison of Sandpoint, who we actually, I believe, coined Captain Chaos on the football field. So, he was mentioning, he messaged me on Twitter and he's like, "Hey, how come you never give us any shout outs?" And I'm like, "Hey, I don't know anything about lacrosse. So fill me in and I'll definitely give you a shout out." So he said, "Hey, we beat Lake City the other day, 8-7. And, we're looking at possibly making the playoffs for the first time this year. And both programs in Coeur d'Alene are doing really well too and having a great season." So, he was just kind of like dropping a little rabbit trail for us to follow as far as lacrosse up in North Idaho, something we've been missing and something definitely worth giving a shout out to.
Yeah, the way they do lacrosse here in the state of Idaho, it's a little different. There's basically two state tournaments, and it's not like basketball where you all go to one place over 3 days. It's like, okay, the first round, the higher seeded teams will host, and then the semifinal. It's almost like football. It's kind of where it's broken up over, a couple of days, and generally speaking, the better teams get to host. But the other kind of tweak is that there are two state tournaments, and it's basically like a Class A and a Class B, and nobody knows exactly how it's seeded, but generally speaking, it's kind of based upon prior program history, competitiveness, numbers. And so what happens is lacrosse right now is being dominated statewide by the Boise schools. And the Boise schools, they know who's good and who isn't, basically. And the premier programs all get put into Class A, and the programs that are still kind of new or struggling get put into Class B. Now, how does that affect the North? Well, just like every other sport, the North pretty much gets one bid. And last year, I believe Lake City made it, and they actually got to host a first-round game. They actually played it in Missoula, Montana, to try and meet halfway because the team was coming from Idaho Falls.
The benefit of having an Idaho State tournament in the state of Montana. But
well,
it does make sense.
And I will say that the Idaho Lacrosse League does have one out-of-state team, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Competes with Idaho, because in Wyoming, I'm not sure there's any other places that do lacrosse. Sure. There's last year there were playoff games in Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho all on the same day. It was kind of like a Northwest type.
Well, I believe baseball used to, I don't know if it still is or not, but it used to be hosted at Treasure Valley Community College in Ontario. So
yes,
I don't know if it's still out there or not, but I know that we've had state tournament games in the state of Oregon. So, that has existed before.
Right. And so, it's not like too unusual, but I generally speaking, those North teams get the one bid. But maybe with the A and B bracket, if Sandpoint is kind of still in the process of becoming a contender, maybe they'll be put in that B bracket again. Like I said, I don't know how that all gets figured out.
Yeah,
It's
I don't
pretty
either.
pretty arbitrary, I think. But way to go, Sandpoint. Knocking out Lake City is pretty big. And
Yeah.
I guess Sandpoint's dominance of the 5A programs continues. Right? We saw it in football.
Football, and then now moving into lacrosse. So yeah, there's some success moving across the field per se, but and we also saw them in soccer have a really dominant season too. So they're rolling along. It's going to be cool to see. And I know that not to look ahead too soon to football season, but I'm excited for their schedule and Coeur d'Alene's schedule. I got to tell you, man, like there's going to be some insanely awesome games this fall.
Yeah, we'll get there. We got to get to the finish line.
We got a long way to go before that, but I'm already seeing stuff come out, and I'm like, yes, like we're seeing Coeur d'Alene playing Rigby at University of Montana possibly. So there's some awesome stuff coming up down the chute. So I'm looking forward to it.
And of course, listeners may or may not know, Missoula is kind of where I grew up. So I'll gladly volunteer to.
Yeah, I'll be your color guy if you want. I'll hop on the bus with Coeur d'Alene. So.
Yeah, whenever I get a chance to go home, you can't pass that up. So all right, so that's kind of our lacrosse and kicked Ryan out. Hold on. Sorry, I kicked you. I was waving my hands wildly and kicked you off the screen for a second. If you're watching this video on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel or Facebook page, you'll see Ryan disappear and come back. If you're listening audio only, IdahoSports.com or wherever you download your podcasts, you'll have no idea what we're talking about. So anyways, let's move into another sport that we don't cover a ton, or at least haven't yet. But now as we get towards the last 3 weeks of the season, we'll start talking about it more and more, is golf. Golf is the first spring sport to wrap up. Their postseason is rapidly approaching, and there's a lot of good golfers up north.
There's a ton of good. I mean, Coeur d'Alene's got a rock solid team. They won the Lake City Invite. We would have talked about it on last week's show, but their entire lineup scored under an 80. So their medalist, I mean, he was 3 under. So they got a solid program there at Coeur d'Alene High School, and Lake City and Post Falls got some solid guys. Lewiston's got some great golfers too, and you go into the 4A ranks too, and there's some great kids around the area as well. But a small school golfer kind of raised some eyebrows. We don't see it very often in high school golf, but we had an ace, a hole-in-one from CJ Elliott of Genesis Prep. Got it on the par 3 13th hole, Red Wolf Golf Club in Clarkston for a tournament hosted by Lapway. It was supposed to actually take place at the University of Idaho, and then they moved it because of weather. It actually went down to the valley. We've talked about before, when weather stinks, you always head to the valley. And so they had the tournament down at Red Wolf, the new owner golf club. It used to be Clarkson Country Club, but now it's the Red Wolf Golf Club, and he had a hole-in-one. Pretty awesome feat for a high school kid.
That is so awesome. And like you said, there's so many good golf. Coeur d'Alene, a kid that wins an invite 1 week may finish 3rd the next week, but it's their lineup top to bottom, you're right, is so good. We talked about St. Mary's a little bit. Kellogg always has a really awesome golf program, and the best golfer I think personally in the north, male or female, is Braylon Bayer of Bonners Ferry. She's only I believe only a sophomore. And she is, if not the favorite. Reese Gary from Kimberly is also very good, but those two will be dueling for the 3A individual title at state coming up later this spring. So,
we don't have the greatest weather necessarily in the spring usually, but man, we've got some awesome courses. And even in Kellogg, you've got Galena Ridge, which is only a nine hole course, but man, that course is awesome. And, so you get to look at some of these kids get to play just insane golf courses around the area. The Idaho Club in Sandpoint, I know it's a Jack Nicklaus course. It hosted the IEL tournament a few years ago. And, obviously you've got Coeur d'Alene Resort. Coeur d'Alene Public's a great course too. Avondale. And there's just some amazing courses up here in North Idaho that, the kids get to take advantage of.
Yeah, even it's over in District 2, you've got some beautiful facilities out there as well, and
got some great courses, and there's a lot of nice stuff out there now.
Yeah, and I'll give a shout out to the Moscow golf team as well. They always seem to be on the boys' side, especially Bryden Brown and company, always really good there. So, all right, let's move to track and field, where it has been a school record year for Post Falls, boys and girls side. Every week, Samantha Wood setting or bettering her own previous school records in the
Or
distance
doing a
race.
new event and just setting a school record the first time ever running it. I mean, yeah, good grief.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that, because that happened a couple weeks ago. But what a wild! She usually runs the mile and the 2 mile, right?
Yeah, she runs the mile and 2 mile. She steps and the 800. She steps
Yeah.
out on the track for the 400. And first time ever running it, I've got the time. It was like, what was it, 57.7 in the 400, which set the school record, and it's the number 2 time in the state of Idaho. So, I mean, come on, it's just not fair. It's really just not fair running against her. But the Post Falls has got some insane athletes, and you got Anastasia Peters, who also runs the 3200, who's got the number 3 time and the number 4 time in the 1600. So I mean, you've got 2 of the top 5 runners in the state in every event, it seems, for the distance runners at Post Falls.
And again, the problem is that Boise High has not only the athletes to match those top 2 you mentioned, but then they've got a whole team of distance runners that just make it so tough. But Post Falls could go down, I think, and get a top 3 finish on the girls' side, provided they get some wins by Wood and company. And then on the boys' side, Dalton Wild has continued to impress in the short sprints also.
Yeah, Dalton goes down to the night invite down there at BK, and in his prelim heat runs a 10.95 in the 100 and sets the school record just casually. Ends up, I believe, taking second in the event, but he's got the number 3 time in the state in that event. But there is some blistering times now taking place in the state of Idaho. I think we're seeing a different breed of athlete start to come through a lot of these schools. I mean, from 3A up, and we can even go into the 1As. You look at Cadence Beck at Highland on the girl side is just, I mean, she's got the number 1 time in 3 different events in the state, and she's basically the track team. So there's, and then Kristen Wimhoff from Prairie showing up now, and now she's, starting to set some top 3 times as well. So there's some great athletes that are up here in North Idaho that are going to definitely make some noise come state.
Yeah, and we've talked about, like the throwers from Orofino. They've been really awesome. Lewiston has some good athletes. There's some awesome track and field action. I would have loved to have been there for that 100 duel between Dalton Wild and James Onanabosi of BK, because that dude can fly. I think he committed to Utah to run sprints for the Utes track program. So that's good company to be in.
The Bears down there, Kimberly, and I mean, good grief, it's not fair. It's really just not fair.
Dude, you want to hear something insane? All right, real quick. I know we don't talk about Kimberly because they're District 4 and this is District 1 too, but these brothers, Jackson Bear and Gatlin Bear. Yeah. Gatlin's only a sophomore, and Jackson's a senior. He's going to go compete in the SEC in the decathlon. He's going to go to, I believe it's Arkansas. And they've already got a brother that's at Mississippi State competing in track. An older brother, Peyton Bear, who's already graduated. Okay, so here's the crazy thing. Those 3 boys are all very talented. I have heard that they've got a younger sister who's in middle school, Carly Bear, and she is, they always say the youngest is the best to come through, but I do know she just set a new middle school record. I think it was in the 400. It's the 3rd best time in the nation for middle school. I mean, how insane is that?
The genetics are decent in that family. They're okay.
Just all right. Holy smoke. Anyways,
but
so that's good.
Yeah, and I also wanted to give a shout. Rusty Lee from Sandpoint, he's continuing his tear. He's got the the number 2 time in the 110 hurdles. He ended up winning the Pasco invite, which was pretty cool. Obviously we know he's got the number 1 time in the 300 hurdles still, but he shows up in the high jump and ends up jumping 6'2" and now has the number 2 jump in the state. So there's some guys that are just coming out, like we talked about weather getting nicer and stuff coming out of the woodworks, and Lakeland's 4x1 team ends up throwing down the number 2 time so far at 43.9 in the 4x1. So there's a lot of stuff that's just like these kids are coming out and showing up every week now, and especially in the 3As. The 3As are now really making some noise up north too, with a lot of their times and distances that are going on. Like Eric Deem is set pole vault 12 feet. He's got the number 5. He just shows up out of nowhere. And then Shane Gamber from Priest River in the 300 hurdles, he's got the number 2 time. Wasn't even on the radar most of the year, and all of a sudden now he's starting to run some blistering splits. And so there's definitely some noise to be made now. I think the next 2-3 weeks as we lead up to state meet.
Yeah, and we'll keep an eye on all of those great track and field performers. Let's continue our spring sports circuit here. Let's go to softball, because man, there are some interesting. I'm going to call them pennant races. You're not really fighting for the pennant like in Major League Baseball, but there's some interesting pennant races coming up down the stretch. By my estimation, really the only district or classification that's pretty settled is 3A. Timberlake's kind of running away with things there, but otherwise you've got a 5A between Lewiston, Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls. They are all right there. Lakeland and Moscow fighting in 4A. In the 2A ranks, we thought St. Mary's, they were one of the best teams in the state, but Orofino continues to show up, and they beat St. Mary's. It ended up being a non-conference game. So St. Mary's, swept Orofino in the 3 conference games, but still to get a win against St. Mary's was impressive. And then in the 1A as well.
The 1A is crazy. Potlatch coming out of nowhere now, just on a tear where they're 8-0 in conference now.
Well, and Potlatch was one of the best teams last year and just got into a bad part of the bracket. They've got Rebecca Butterfield and Emma Chambers. And they're, we did an interview last year with Dean Butterfield. He's the softball coach at Potlatch. And he talked about how his daughter, Rebecca Butterfield, has 8 different pitches she can throw. It was 8 or 9 pitches, and it's just nuts. But speaking of pitching, I think the top softball story has got to be in Lewiston, where earlier this week, there's all these Barney girls on Lewiston, right? There's Taryn Barney and Robin Barney, and now there's a freshman, Jenna Barney. She throws a no-hitter. How cool
throws
is that?
a no-no against Sandpoint.
Yeah.
I mean, and Lewiston, the crazy thing about the Bengals too, I mean, you look at the 5A IEL, they're sitting with their league record, they're 7-3, but they've had so many cancellations due to weather. They've on their schedule remaining, they've got 2 against Lakeland, they've got 4 games against Lake City still, Moscow, and then 2 against Post Falls. Realistically, they could run the table or get a split with Post Falls, I think is more realistic. But, if they got a split with that Post Falls left, I mean, that puts them at 4 league losses and runs the table down the stretch. That's looking really good for districts going in. But, Post Falls has a favorable schedule down the stretch. I mean, they've got Coeur d'Alene still in front of them with this, I would see them probably splitting in that. But with Post Falls having Lewis and Coeur d'Alene left, Coeur d'Alene's got Sandpoint, Lake City, Post Falls. So it's, the Bengals really have, I want to say, the outside chance to maybe sneak in either to the 1 seed if they can, make some noise down the stretch, and maybe Coeur d'Alene slips to Post Falls. But it's really, I mean, that 5A is, the top 3 teams are brutal. They're all good, all really solid teams.
We saw it in so many sports this year: volleyball, girls basketball, not always the same schools, but generally 3 of the 4
football
have all been
every
very,
sport, I think it came down in almost every sport.
Right. And somebody's got to finish 4th just by virtue. That's not to say that, Lake City isn't good, but man, they got to play some of the best teams in the state. So somebody's got to finish last. It's just the way it goes. It's going to be fascinating to watch those races develop down the stretch. I think the craziest schedule to end the year is going to be Lapway softball. Before last night, they played Troy in a doubleheader last night. It was their 2nd and 3rd games of the year, respectively. Prior to last night, they had played 1 game.
Yeah, it's insane.
And so
weather has caused an absolute nightmare for some teams' schedules. Like, you look at Grangeville's in the same boat too.
Yeah, and look at this. So, by the way, Grangeville baseball is hosting St. Mary's on Saturday. They're actually going to play those games in Kuski at Clearwater Valley, which is kind of a cool deal. They're a little neutral site action, make it a little easier for both of those teams. Okay, so look at this schedule for Lapway softball here. Tonight they play at Clearwater Valley. We're recording this on Wednesday, April 27th. The following day, Thursday, they're at Genesee for a doubleheader. Saturday the 30th, they're at Nez Perce for 2. Then they get a couple of days off. But next Thursday the 5th, at Potlatch for 2. Friday the 6th, at Prairie for 2. And Saturday the 7th, they host Clearwater Valley. So that is over the next 2 weeks, over the next 10 days. They're playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
12 games. 10 or 12 games, yeah. That's like they're playing a city league tournament.
Right? And I only bring this up because everyone's going to look right now and go, Lapway, oh, they're 0-3 and whatever. It wouldn't surprise me if they got hot. And all of a sudden everybody's like, a Lapway came out of nowhere because
they had one game. Okay.
Well, yeah. And Ada Marks, the girls basketball coach, is also the softball coach at Lapway. Her daughter, Jordan McCormick Marks, is the top pitcher on the team. Lauren Gold. I mean, you're going to see names up and down the softball roster that you recognize from basketball, and they're winners. They just win.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Plays. So, I mean, and that's the thing about these lineups too. I mean, I see some of these kids showing up, and you can look at Paul. Obviously, you knew Potlatch was going to be good coming into the season. We were like, oh, they started slow. They started 3-2, but it was like they got rained out a bunch, and then all of a sudden now they've won like 8 in a row. So, I mean, it's you look at what the Loggers are doing, and Kendrick's right behind them, and Prairie's right there, and it's just it's going to be kind of a murderer's row for everybody just because that's what weather's done. But really, what I see it causing is that you're going to get teams that are scorching hot coming into the state tournament. And it's going to almost create a vacuum, I think, with some of the weather issues that you've had that, not necessarily the teams that get the time off are the ones that have the most success at state. And I mean, Centennial boys basketball, for example, look at what they were able to accomplish making their run. So, yeah, I mean, coming down the stretch, you're going to see, I think we're going to get a state champion, maybe 2 out of the North on the softball side. It wouldn't surprise me if we got 3. I mean, Timberlake's hot right now. I don't know what they've got as far as rotation. If they can, withstand the entire state tournament and make some noise there. But at least 1A and 2A, I see, a couple favorites right there. Maybe an outside chance at 5A with either, Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, Lewiston. But yeah, there's a puncher's chance definitely there for at least 2 titles, I think.
Yeah, in softball, excuse me, in softball, everybody's got a stud pitcher, an ace. Yep. If you've got 2 pitchers, you're in the mix. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, because basically you trade off between the 2 pitchers. It's crazy to me how a girl that just threw 7 innings is able to turn around 4 hours later and throw 7 more innings. It's crazy, but it happens in softball all the time. So yeah.
Especially if you got some stuff. I mean, not necessarily just your fastball, that you can throw some, some of the junk in there that causes ground balls. You get a lot of ground ball outs. I mean, good grief, you can keep yourself not throwing very many pitches in a game. Protect your arm that way.
Definitely. Let's move to baseball, where a lot of races to me are kind of wrapped up. I think 5A Lewiston to me is the clear best team.
Coeur d'Alene's right there. I mean,
yeah, I know.
But
I just I don't know. Yeah. I look at Lewiston on paper and I really like them.
I like their outfield. I like their pitching a lot.
Yeah. Sandpoint, I still like the best in 4A. I know Moscow is right there as well, but I still like Sandpoint. 3A, it's going to come down to Timberlake and Bonners Ferry. I like Bonners.
I like Timberlake.
I like Bonners. See, so yeah, this is the interesting part. 2A to me.
Well, Kellogg's right there too. I mean, they're tied with Bonners Ferry too. So I mean, I wouldn't put the Wildcats too far out of it either. But 2A is weird to me. This one, I mean, St. Mary's owning the season schedule against Orfino and having the losing record. I mean, just I look at it and I'm like, okay. But I mean, Orfino's a solid program too. But man, it's been weird.
I really thought coming in that Grangeville was actually the favorite. They won the title last year. They won the football title this year in a kind of a similar way. Yeah, they lost a lot to graduation, but they were able to still use their program pedigree. And I thought the same thing would happen in baseball, but they've really struggled. And I think it's going to come down to really any of those three. And that's the crazy part about their playoffs, right? Whoever winning the conference will be so important because that gets you the bye into the best of three.
Yep.
Whereas if you're Orofino or Grangeville right now having to play that play-in game, that's a coin flip. That could go either way, I think. So
no, absolutely. I mean, and then you go into the 1As, and the 1A is just like you look at it and you almost get a headache. So you've got 6 legit teams that are there that could genuinely win the district title. I mean, Genesee is good, let's be honest, but I mean, there's not much difference from Troy down to Kendrick between anybody.
Right. And Troy is a team that I've been pleasantly surprised by. Genesee we knew was going to be good with Jack Johnson leading the way on the mound and Cameron Meyer as well. Yeah. And Troy last year was really good, but it was behind the efforts of Derek Byer on the pitcher's mound. And of course he graduated and to the point where Troy was a top 3 seed, I think, going into districts, and they got upset. That was a wild district tournament last year, by the way. Genesee came in as the 5 seed. They ended up winning state. So there was a lot of upsets usual.
You could see that out of Cami. I mean, you're looking at Cami right now. They're sitting back there in 5th, and you could have the same scenario right there with the Cubs coming through. I mean, really, 1A is it's an absolute just meat grinder between them and Prairie and Clearwater Valley. Kendrick's in the mix too. That, I mean, and it's anybody's game. Honestly, I really do see that you could see the 1 seed losing in the first round of the district tournament.
Yeah, Cami, low numbers, but boy, they're all really good players, and you want to keep them off the bases because once they get on the base paths, that's a problem. They can steal bases. They like to they like making these wild bird motions and try and deke out the
Savannah bananas.
Yeah, right. They do that a little bit, but it's fun to watch. And to me, Clearwater Valley also, what a season they're having. Josh Bradley, their baseball coach, is doing a tremendous job with the Rams. They weren't really on the periphery of too many teams coming into the season, but here they are now, top half of the league.
Yeah, and the Pirates are still sitting right there too in Prairie, and you know what Kendrick has. They're young, but I mean, good grief, they can play. I mean, we saw them kind of make a run in state in basketball, and then we saw them obviously on the football field. But you got athletes, just put them on the field and let them do their work. You're going to usually find success, but you got to kind of get them in the right position. And they're 5-5-1, but I mean, obviously that schedule with that league is saying, well, I mean, I think they've got a tougher road than any of the other teams, but Genesee's just all they're doing is winning right now, and that's pretty much all you can do and take advantage if you get lucky and get nice weather. I mean, we got rain off and on throughout the rest of this week, so it'd be interesting to see if we get any cancellations.
Yeah, there's a lot of good brother pairings in the White Pine League, right? If you're Genesee, you've got Teak Wareham, Cy Wareham. You've got for Prairie, Chase Cashmitter, Cody Cashmitter. Even at Cami, you've got Willis Williamson and Herschel Williamson. So, it's all these family affairs in the White Pine League as well. A lot of fun to watch. So, all right, let's wrap up with tennis because this was supposed to take place a while ago, but weather kind of pushed it off, and now finally the biggest tennis invite of the season is happening this weekend.
Yeah, so you've got the Inland Empire Invitational in Spokane. Almost every North Idaho team will be there. Plus you got all the Eastern Washington and Central Washington teams. I believe the number was up to like in the 50s. It's a crazy big tournament. I've coached there numerous times, and uber competitive, and it'll be interesting to see. I think, I don't know if any of the North Idaho teams are necessarily a favorite to win, but I think we might see some individual successes. Even getting to the consolation finals matches on Saturday is a huge deal. Just making it to the second day period is a big statement that you've got some success in your program. I see teams like Coeur d'Alene and Sandpoint. Lake City's going to get a few kids. You might see a few out of Lakeland as well, and Lewiston's going to get a few, I think, to the second day as well. Moscow, especially in the doubles, I think, on the girls' side. And then in boys singles, I think might sneak a few through. So it'll be interesting to see. It's a different type of animal because you see different styles every match. You're going to see heavy hitters. You'll see, the finesse players that have a really good net game. But it'll be interesting to see that your more balanced players tend to have the most success there. And so, if you got a heavy hitter, you almost do better throwing them in mixed doubles. just to see if you can take advantage of, having some new mixed teams that are out there that get put together just for this tournament. It'll be cool to see what North Idaho can do, but it's a huge tournament. And I mean, there's, I think, 14 sites that games are played at. So it'll be cool to see. It's a coaching nightmare to try to watch your kids. I can attest to that, but yeah, a ton of fun for the kids. They have a blast, and we're supposed to have decent weather on Friday. So looking forward to see how things roll out for that one.
Yeah, as a coach, it's almost impossible to be everywhere. So there'll be some unsupervised matches for sure. Yeah. Unsupervised, not in terms of like people are going to go crazy, but like there just won't be a coach there.
There just won't be a coach. Yeah, you have a parent that might say something and then get in trouble. So it's like, but it's one of those things that the kids just have a good time and they're playing, you'll get a Sandpoint kid playing an Eastmont kid from Wenatchee and somebody that probably never see during the season. So it's a cool opportunity to play some new people.
Important weekend for seeding at state as well. If you do well at this tournament, that's going to give you a boost when the coaches all get together and figure out how they seed state.
Yeah, big time.
So, all right. Well, hey, one week off and we came back and we hit every sport, Ryan. That's pretty good.
We rounded the bases on this one. Yeah,
we did. We're gasping for air now, but we did. We chugged around the bases and now we're headed for home. So, all right. Well, hopefully the weather cooperates and we have.
It was raining a little bit today, so we'll see. I mean, I think I'll hold my breath. The Diamond Dry is definitely we're keeping that industry well in force right now with the weather we've had the last couple of weeks.
Right. And for those that don't, Diamond Dry is the stuff that they put on the dirt on a baseball, softball field, absorbs the rain and dries out very quickly. And so, yeah, we're running out of time on the schedule we can't have any more rainouts or anything like that. So fingers crossed. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in to the North Idaho Prepcast. We will be back next week to break down the Inland Empire Invite and tennis and more important conference baseball and softball action as well. So for Ryan Scaggs, I'm Brandon Baney. We'll see you next time on IdahoSports.com.